There you go.
Sorry, I think my team's decided to have like a heart attack and started flashing weird things. So I was like, yeah, we'll just restart. It's the fix for all my problems today, and that worked perfectly. So, hi everybody. My name is Kendra Corman, and I'm going to be helping moderate the chat a little bit here. And I'd like to take a minute to go ahead and introduce Joe Waynes of TurtleWorks. He's the founder of TurtleWorks, and it's an amazing organization that really helps you leverage the power of your Microsoft investment. As a small business owner myself, TurtleWorks has saved me, I think it's over $1,500 just in learning through webinars and things like that of different tools that I can use. We also are joined today by Sandpoint Consulting. We do have Brian Worthland, who's the president and founder, and I believe Sarah is also here, who is from Sandpoint. So we appreciate them joining and co-hosting this with TurtleWorks. Today, Joe is going to be talking about scorecard strategies, which, as business owners and consultants working with businesses, we understand the importance of this, because if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get done and improved, right? So, without further ado, I will turn it over to Joe. Oh, I started to say one more thing. Feel free to post questions in the chat. I will be jumping in to talk to Joe along the way as questions come up and monitoring that chat. So again, feel free to note, any questions that come up along the way, and I can jump in and answer those, get those answered for you. Okay. And without further ado, here's Joe.
All right. Thanks, Kendra. All right, so we're going to talk about the case for Scorecard, and we're going to talk about eliminating manual reporting. I'm going to have a slide with some resources. We can talk a bit about next steps, and we have this Q&A opportunity. So let's keep going here. The case for a scorecard. Why do you need to pay attention to numbers, how to choose them, and some examples. So as Kendra alluded to, what gets measured gets improved, done, optimized, managed. It gets attention. So recently, my kid installed this fitness app on his phone, and he's been following his calorie intake. So I'm sort of on a whim. I thought, well, let me try this. I'm going to install it. Let's see what my breakfast cost in calories. And my whole day was completely changed by doing that, because suddenly I was looking at real numbers as opposed to speculation about how much that extra cookie, that extra whatever it was going to impact my overall health. So when I had this app giving me real numbers, it changed my world. I was making different choices. So that's the reality of numbers. They cut through murky, subjective communication, especially between managers and direct reports. So these are some bullets from Gino Wickman. He's the founder of the Entrepreneurial Operating System. He has a great book called Traction, and there's another one in resources, How to Be a Great Boss. Both of those talk about the importance of numbers. Just a couple other bullets. Numbers produce results. They create direct accountability. You can solve problems faster with numbers. And then another book that I really enjoy reading is The Great Game of Business. This fellow runs his whole business from an open books perspective, and everyone's involved in the numbers. But emotions can cloud the brain, but the numbers don't lie, is just one of the lines from the book. Another great book to read. How to choose your numbers. So I think there's three types of numbers, at least that I've encountered. There's leading indicators, there's lagging indicators, and there's a critical indicator. So when I think of a leading indicator, I'm thinking of driving in my car, looking out the windshield. Where am I going? What's the next exit? How far before I need to fill up? I'm looking ahead. Lagging indicators is looking in the rearview mirror. So I got off I-75, I'm on M59, I made the right turn, great. Um, so we'll talk more about those as we get into the presentation. The critical indicator is that one metric that matters the most. Like if you don't hit that number, you don't have a business. And we'll talk a bit about that as well. Numbers have scope also. So if I'm a C-level, if I'm a corporate decision maker, then I'm looking at a different set of numbers than if I'm responsible for the sales department. If I'm responsible for the sales department, how many salespeople do I have out? How many calls did they make today? How many quotes did we turn in today? Those are the things you're looking at that level. And then if I'm a person, I will have my own set of numbers. So maybe a customer service person has to answer the phone within 3 rings. And that's what they're trying to accomplish. Um, Leading indicators as I get here, these are some examples, the number of meaningful sales phone calls this week. So what I like to think about when I think about leading indicators is they change my behavior. So they're numbers that I think about. So for me, I need to make 15 meaningful sales calls a week. And if I don't do that, then I'm not on track from a revenue perspective for the year. So I need to make those 15 calls. That's a leading indicator for me. A lagging indicator would be, well, how much new revenue did I get this month? And that's a result of me making those phone calls. So that's the difference. They're both important. They're just used for different purposes. The critical number, it has the biggest impact on what you're doing and where you're going. Every company has one. Often it's best if you sit down with a couple team members to figure out what that number is. That number will change based on your situation and environment. So if you're in a recession, it's probably sales related. If you're selling like gangbusters, it's probably hiring and turnover related. And there's a couple other ideas here, but it's that one number that matters the most. It's the one that keeps you and your people up at night. Here's just a couple examples of leading indicators. Number of outstanding accounts receivable calls that you made, that would be leading. Lagging would be, looking at your P&L or balance sheet, or how much money do I have in the bank. Those are indicators as well. From a sales perspective, as I alluded to, how many calls this week, how many referrals, how many quotes, how many ancillary sales or add-ons did we sell as we were doing, as we were closing some business. And lagging would be, well, how did our pipeline grow this quarter? What is the deal velocity? Are we able to cover our pipeline? Here's just a simple example of something done where you're looking at, how many billable hours and cash flow and whatnot. So one example of how you could have a scorecard. Um, Here's some other ideas regarding labor, customer service, and manufacturing. And then this is another example of a scorecard. It's basically Excel. It's got all the numbers. It's got all the categories. It has who's responsible for it. Very powerful tool if you're sitting in a team and you just go through these one line at a time and yes or no, yes or no. How did we do? So a couple examples. The second thing I wanted to talk about was, why do we need to eliminate manual reporting? Well, and then what tools can we use to do that? I'll take a little time to demo, and Sandpoint has a chance to talk about some of the tools that they work with, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So let's get into why. So what I often see, I've literally had these conversations where I ask somebody, what are 5 reports that you do every week? And they tell me, and then I'll say, I think you spend 8 hours every week making those reports manually. And they sheepishly shake their head yes. They're kind of embarrassed that they're spending that much time manually. So what they'll do is they'll open a core system like their ERP system. They'll export that data out of it and put it into Excel. And then they'll do all kinds of manual manipulations on the data in Excel. They'll apply some formulas. They may even get clever and create a template in Excel with some formulas that are there, and they can paste their data in. So it saves them time, but they're stuck within that Excel tool because that's what they know. And then from there, they'll create pivot tables, charts, graphs. Maybe they're pasting it in a PowerPoint because they got to do some kind of presentation in a conference room. And then they rinse and repeat, and they do that every day, week, or month. I'm quoting a job right now. 3 hours a day they spend on a particular metric. 3 hours every day they're manually creating this report. So we should be able to eliminate that 3 hours. That's 15 hours a week they're going to get back. If you do the math, if you're spending 4 hours a week and your burden labor rate is $60 an hour, that works out to $11,000 a year that you're spending doing manual reporting. So you can save that money by automating this. So tools you own, most likely everyone on this call owns or uses and owns Excel. And everyone on this call has access to Power BI because it's free from Microsoft. Inside of Excel and inside Power BI, there's something known as the Power BI, the Power Query Editor. And this is a really slick tool that lets you do a couple of things. One, it lets you connect to multiple data sources at the same time. So if you have data in Salesforce and you have data in your ERP and you have some data in a spreadsheet, but you need to bring all of that together, that's why you get stuck in that manual world, because you got to pull from those three systems, marry them up on customer ID, part number, whatever it is, and then create your reports. Well, Power BI lets you connect to all three at the same time. It lets you define those relationships on part number and customer ID, and it remembers that. But then all of those manual manipulations like, well, we just need to filter out data so we only see this year, and we don't want these particular kind of customers to appear in this report. And we really need to convert this so that it shows up as currency as opposed to something else. So you do all of those manipulations in Excel. You can do those very same steps in Power Query Editor, and they're saved, they're recorded. So now the next time you go into Power Query Editor or Excel or Power BI and you hit refresh, it reaches out to those connections, it gets the latest data, it applies all of those steps that you defined the first time, and your data is now ready. Your data is now ready for you to look at through the visualizations that come in Power BI or charts, graphs, that kind of thing in Excel. So an additional advantage that Power BI has over Excel is that you can publish. So you can push your stuff out to the Microsoft Power BI service, which lets you then get to your reports and your visuals over the internet with any internet connected device. You have to log in, of course. It's behind Microsoft security, connected with your Microsoft 365 account or not. If you don't have Microsoft 365, you can still do Power BI without it for free. So the security is there. You can schedule automatic refreshes up to 8 times a day, or you can just click refresh and it'll go get your latest data. Mobile access, I talked about. Alerts, so you can set thresholds like, hey, if my scrap costs hit $30,000 for the week, I want to get an email, I want to get a text, I want to know about this because I got to go do something. So you can put those alerts in place within Power BI. The on-premise gateway allows you, even though you're out on the road, you connect to the internet. It is the connection point between the Power BI service and your spreadsheets and your ERP and whatever. So when you hit refresh, it goes through that gateway to get that data in a secure manner. There's a couple other things I'll gloss over, but there's two kinds of versions in Power BI. There's the desktop version, which is fantastic. And don't be misled by the title. Desktop you then publish to the cloud, but it's fantastic for creating scorecards and doing data analysis. And then the Power BI report builder is what you would use to build pixel perfect paginated reports. So if you need to print reports with a footer and a header and page numbers, or print those to PDF, Power BI report builder is the tool you want. And in both cases, they're free for you to use as an individual. If you need to use them within an enterprise or within a business and share reports, that's when you have to get into some licensing. But the costs for licensing really compared to the other tools are minimal. It's $10 a month for desktop and 20 for report builder. So I have seen Power BI recover many wasted hours every day. So tools you might own, QuickBooks, ERP, or an accounting system, they all probably have some kind of report builder. Most of the time that report builder is constrained to that particular system. So you can't use QuickBooks, as far as I know, to go look at your SharePoint Online data or to tie it to Excel or Salesforce or something else. You're stuck with just dealing with QuickBooks data. ERP and accounting is often the same. Not always, but usually that's where we're at with those kind of report builders. So most of the time, those aren't enterprise tools. And this is where we get to talk a little about Sandpoint and what it is that they do. So their focus is enterprise or corporate performance management tools. And they deal with OneStream and SAP Analytics Cloud, a product called Kepion and Blackline. And at this point, Brian, you should be good to step up and tell us a little about these and tell us a little bit about Sandpoint.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience. Here's a little bit about Sandpoint. So our focus, as Joe mentioned, is in the enterprise performance management space, which is really the office of the CFO. It's helping companies improve processes around budgeting, planning, financial reporting, forecasting, and making their lives a lot easier. When you saw that slide from Joe and how long does it take to make or build a report, that's what we do with the accounting and finance departments of our customer base. A little bit about us: we've been in business. We're starting our 21st year, and we have originally we started with a company called OutlookSoft, which was purchased by SAP in 2007, and it was called Business Planning and Consolidation, or BPC. Since then, we've added additional tools like OneStream, which is a Michigan-based software company out of Rochester Hills, and they've been in business 10 years and have a lot of momentum in regards to kind of the next generation of these EPM, CPM tools. Also, we work with Blackline, which helps companies improve account reconciliation, account matching tasks around the close process of public companies. And then at the bottom here, SAP Analytics Cloud is the next generation of SAP's planning and business intelligence software, which really has roots from business objects. So we work specifically with their forecasting and planning module. So what's happening in the SAP world, BPC is it's in support mode. And they have multiple versions, and some of the versions will be discontinued in regard to support and development. And so companies now are looking at kind of the next generation of these tools as they move forward in their roadmap of replacing these some of these legacy EPM systems. We're a small company or boutique firm, very focused in the office of the CFO. Our consultants are CPAs. They have a number of years on the corporate side, also public accounting, and on the corporate side, and implementing these types of systems to improve financial and accounting processes. And then that's our goal, is really to work side by side with our customers, small focused teams, to make sure our customers, receive the knowledge transfer and the training and understand really the complexities around these EPM systems to make their lives and their companies more successful.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so it's demo time. So I'm going to use Power BI Desktop. I'm going to connect to 3 data sources: Access, SharePoint, and Excel. I'm going to create just one scorecard. It's going to show daily scrap cost, and it's going to compare it to the threshold. And if we have time, I'll publish it to the Power BI service. You can see how simple that is. And then if we really have time, I'll show you how you can actually, within Microsoft Teams, look at your scorecard within a particular team. So let's get started. I'm going to have to get this guy going. All right, so I did the Julia Childs thing, and I sort of half cooked it. So we can deal with our time constraints. So I talked about 3 data sets. You can see I already have 2 that are created, so parts. Let's dive in a little farther. This is Power BI Desktop. This is the part of the tool where we can build the visualizations and we can define the relationships. This is Power Query Editor. So this is the tool that I mentioned that exists both in Excel and in Power BI. So here you can see those two queries. And if we look at parts, I'm going to go to the first step. You'll see that it's pointing to an Excel spreadsheet. So sitting on my C drive, and when we point Power BI at or a Power Query Editor at it, it says, hey, this is an Excel file. It could have multiple worksheets. So which worksheet do you want us to use? And the answer is this parts worksheet. So that gets selected, and now the Query Editor shows us what's on that particular worksheet, which is 3 columns. And if you'll look, the first row is the header column. Well, we need the names of these columns up here to actually be part ID, part name, and scrap costs. So we promote those, and that happens. And then there's one final thing I need to do with this. You'll notice that part ID is a number, but over here we're showing it that it's an alphanumeric data type, meaning it could have letters. We don't want that. So we're going to change these data types so that part ID is a number, scrap cost is currency, and part name is always text. So that's what this last step is. So these are the steps that sort of get recorded, those manual steps that you do all the time in Excel. We can do them once, they're saved here. If you've got to make changes, you can go back and make changes. If you need to insert a step, you can. And then scrap reason, let's take a peek at that. That's going out to my SharePoint. So I actually have this guy here. This is a SharePoint list, and there's just 5 rows in there with scrap reasons, and that's the scrap code, and that's what the reason is. Standard SharePoint stuff, but I'm connecting to it with the query editor. So first of all, we define where in SharePoint, and then we select which particular list. And SharePoint lists have all this metadata that go along with it. So we only care about 2 columns, but they've given us a bunch. So we'll filter it down to these couple of columns. We'll reorder those columns, and then we'll change the data types as well. Now we have one last step to do, and that's to go get our scrap data. If you know anything about business intelligence, this would be known as the fact data. This is the transaction level data that has, all of the scrap transactions. So the first 2 tables are really like lookups or dimensions. They tell us, what are all the parts? What are all the scrap reasons? Those are tags. This scrap data is what actually happened. So when I look at this access file, there's one table in it. There's a handful of columns. There's no manipulations that I need to do for access on this particular data. Like everything came in, right data type, right names, everything. But you can see there's an ID, part ID. When did the scrap event occur? How many parts were scrapped, and why were they scrapped? So all that fact data is right here. At this point, all I need to do is click close and apply. And it's loading, and poof. So now one of these visualizations is actually working. It's showing us that it's a date slicer. I don't like the fact that it's showing time as well. So I'm going to take a minute over here, and I'm going to change that particular column so that it just shows year, month, and day. And I'm done with date at that point. There's a couple other things that I need to do before we can get this second visualization to work. First of all, we're going to go here and look at the relationships. Well, right now I don't have any relationships. So Power BI doesn't know how these data sets are related to each other, but it's pretty straightforward, right? This is that parts table. Here's part ID. We can point it to part ID in the fact table, the scrap data table. We've defined one relationship. Scrap code is the same as reason code. So now we're going to create that relationship here. And that's all there is to it. Now, if I go back here, it still doesn't work because I need to do a couple things yet. Define the relationships, but I need to know what total scrap cost is. So if we look at parts, we'll see scrap cost. That's what it is for one part. But here we have scrap count. So we could have scrapped 20 pieces. So we've got to do some simple multiplication of scrap count times scrap cost to get where we need to go. So I'm just going to create a quick column here called total scrap cost. Let me grab this guy, come over here, do this, hit enter. And total scrap cost is there. And what am I missing? Max of scrap. No. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's working, but I'm missing the threshold piece. So I had mentioned that we're going to compare against the threshold. So I need to create one more column. And this is, so what I'm showing at this point is on January 8th, we created $46,000 worth of scrap, which is pretty significant, but our threshold is $35,000. So they went over it, which means, that should be red, but it's not for one simple reason, is because low could be good or low could be bad. In this case, there we go. Okay. So now $46,000 in scrap is higher than the $35,000 in scrap, and this gets flagged as bad. So at this point, we've created a very simple scorecard. We're almost out of time, so I can't do the publishing piece. Let's just jump into the rest of the presentation. And so here's the resources slide. I alluded to EOS. We may actually have an EOS person on the call, but the traction book, there's a link to it. How to Be a Great Boss, there's a link as well. There's some stuff on measurables in both traction and in How to Be a Great Boss. Really good reading. Here's a good article, 5 steps to create a great scorecard. Richard Price is an EOS implementer that I work with. And then there's a link for the Great Game of Business. Next steps, if you are interested in having a conversation with me, just click on that link. It'll take you to my calendar. You can schedule some time with me, or you can click that link and that'll take you to Sandpoint's contact page and you can reach out to them that way. Or here is Phil Johnson, who's the VP of Business Development at Sandpoint. You could email Phil and talk with him. Or again, there's my email and phone number as well if you wanted to get through to me. At this point, we're into Q&A. Do we have any questions?
Not any questions yet. Thank you, Joe, for going through all of that. I know that I got some really great points out of that because I've been playing around in Power BI myself because I need to work on my scorecards, and I use lots of different sources of data for marketing and advertising that I do. So does anybody else have any questions? Oh, we've got Aramis has raised their hand. Do you want to unmute Aramis?
Yeah, let me see here. Go ahead, Aramis. You should be unmuted. You might have to also click unmute on your end.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. My question is, will we be able to get a copy of this PowerPoint so we can click on the links for the content for us to review it?
Yeah, so
Okay.
as a follow-up, there will be an email that'll go out in a couple days. It will include the PowerPoint. It'll include a copy of the video.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have Jeff typing right now, so let's see what Jeff has too. I have read Traction. It's right here behind me. It's a very good book if you haven't read it. Okay, so Jeff wants to know what kind of training time you should anticipate for a team member to learn this.
Well, so this could be Power BI, it could be Excel with Query Editor, it could be one of the tools that Brian talked about. So that's I guess sort of a hard question to answer. I'll start with, do you have a scorecard? And getting that scorecard figured out is the first step. figuring out what numbers you really need to care about. So I did this exercise years and years ago. I went in a coffee shop every Friday for a couple of weeks to figure out what I needed to pay attention to and put together a scorecard that way. Then I went through some exercises with EOS. We sort of revamped it. And at this point, I have a scorecard that I find very useful, better than the one I had before. So that's the first step. And, from a training perspective, honestly, picking up either one of those books that I mentioned, it's got some stuff in there. There's also that blog article that'll help defining the scorecard. Then learning how to do this stuff using Query Editor. Gosh, depends on how savvy you are with computers. Like I can talk to you offline, Jeff. Why don't we do that? Why don't you schedule some time with me and we can talk offline?
Okay, Jeff is typing again. Are there any other questions about scorecard strategies, or leveraging Power BI for it? Oh yeah, you're good, Jeff. Jeff was saying they know Excel well and have some scorecards. So I think that they're looking to potentially put in Power BI. So that's what
Okay.
I'm gonna
So
guess.
some of it's pretty intuitive. The query editor piece can be fairly intuitive. It's like there's a big button that says get data. You click on that and you're presented with 30 different kinds of data that you can go get. So if you're going to Excel, you click on it, or SharePoint, or wherever you're going, you click on it and you follow the wizard to get to the place where you're dealing with the data. It's when you get into some aspect of data manipulation that you may bump your head and you have to go do some Googling to figure out how it is to deal with that particular problem. That'll take some time. So, and gosh, Microsoft has made, and YouTube has made, all kinds of videos available. Microsoft has sort of a university, and you could go there to basically watch the videos and work through it. I tend to learn by doing until I get really frustrated and stuck, and then I'll go watch a video and read till I get unstuck, and then I'll keep going, and then I'll get stuck again. Everybody learns differently, but there's resources out there, and again, just tap me and I can walk you through some stuff or give you some ideas.
Okay, great. Any other questions from anybody around Power BI, scorecards? And I'm sorry if you can hear a screaming child in the background.
Can't.
Okay, good. There's been screaming kids in the background all day for one of the offices nearby me. So, so every now and again when I hear it, that's what I go through. Okay, so so Joe, do you want to move back to the contact information slide?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, so we can do that. Robbie.
Yeah. So you could email me or call me if you wanted to. If you also wanted, there's a link here that will take you directly to my calendar, and you could just schedule some time with me that way. So that's one of those tools that Kendra talked about early on that's in your Microsoft 365 that people don't know about. It's called Bookings. So yeah, phone number, email, book some time on my calendar. They're all good.
Yeah, and we'll get the email out either tomorrow or Monday at the latest with the follow-up presentation and the contact information so that you can set the appointment while all of the information is top of mind, because that's key, right? So we'll get that out to you.
All right. So I have to say thank you to Sarah and Brian, and also to Kendra. So I appreciate your contributions and involvement in this.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I think we're all set.
All right.
All right.
And Sarah's typing too, so we'll see. So yeah, so thank you guys all for joining. As I mentioned, we will go ahead and send out a copy of the recording and the PowerPoint presentation with all of the great links and some amazing books that Joe referenced. So if you have any goals of reading some books this year, I recommend adding those to your list. I've read a couple of them, not all of them, so I actually took some notes on that. But we hope to hear from you and see you again at another webinar again soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye
Bye now.
bye.
Thank you.